Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Talk to Me Africa. Today, I have a guest with me whom I'm very excited to talk with because one of the things that she'll be talking about today is grief, which we all relate to as human beings. At one point or another in our lives, we get to experience grief. And how do we handle such grief is what we're going to be learning here today. But first, let me introduce my guest to you, Eyum Ejiga. You are a grief coach and you're passionate about helping people navigate loss and find healing. After experiencing profound personal loss that reshaped your life, you transformed your pain into purpose and dedicated yourself to empowering others through their own healing journeys. You are an inspirational speaker, a coach, and an author. Welcome to Talk to Me Africa.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Mabelle, for having me. It's
I'm
my
excited to
pleasure.
have you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. You look beautiful. I love your outfit. I love your look. And you
Oh,
inspired me to
thank you.
wear something like that as well. So thank you for looking so
Yeah,
gorgeous to come to Talk to Me Africa today.
yeah, we're talking to Africa, and we're
Yeah,
Africans. So I just want to represent Africa properly.
you are doing so from the hair to the outfit, everything. You are
Oh,
great. Thank you so much. And now let me
thank
say you're
you.
joining me from the UK where it is almost midnight and you look gorgeous at such a late hour. So thank you for staying up to be here and Talk to Me Africa.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Before we get into the discussion, let me ask you to tell us a fun fact about Eyum. Something people don't really know about you.
What's a fun fact about me? I think people will know this, but I think people say I laugh a lot that even when I'm speaking on phone and they don't see my face, they can see my giggle or like me giggling on the phone. So
That is a good thing. Yes, they can hear your smile.
yeah, they can hear my smile even over the
Mm.
phone. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Anyway, welcome again to Talk to Me Africa.
Mhm.
Now, who is a grief coach? You are a grief coach. Who is a grief coach?
A grief coach is someone that helps people navigate loss.
Mm.
So grief coaching is a specialized form of coaching where we
Mhm.
focus on helping individuals navigate the challenges that are associated with loss. And
Mhm.
of course, when we talk of loss, it's not just the death of a loved one.
Mhm.
There are many kinds of loss. That is a profound loss when somebody that you love dies. But it can be loss of your health. It can be
Mhm.
loss of your freedom in any shape or form. It can be loss of a relationship. It can
Mhm.
even be loss of a pet. So anything that is dear to you, something that you once had and
Mhm.
is no more,
Mhm.
is a loss. So a grief coach will help you to navigate that loss because usually when loss happen,
Mhm.
people get stuck.
Mhm.
It's difficult for a lot of people to pick themselves up and move forward after a loss. So
Mhm.
grief coaching will help you to be able to move forward. So in grief coaching, we provide solutions that are forward looking,
Mhm.
unlike counseling and therapy that they focus on helping you navigate the past and
Mhm.
deep-seated emotional trauma. Grief coaching is more about forward looking. How do you move forward?
Mhm.
What can you do to move yourself forward? So developing those coping strategies that can help you to move forward. Yes, so in
So
summary,
when you
that is
say move forward, unlike counseling where you look at past life
yeah.
or past trauma, when you are
Mm,
counseling somebody who is going through or who has experienced a profound loss,
mm.
don't they look at that loss and say, how do I go forward from here? Don't they look back at what happened?
No, you look
They don't
backward.
dwell on it though, but they look
Yeah,
at it.
the difference between grief coaching and counseling is that in both of them, there is something that has happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to counseling, that something that happened in the past may be due to whatever challenges you are going through, may
Mm-hmm.
be deep rooted in something else that happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, maybe you were abused as a child
Mm-hmm.
and then you didn't really deal with it. And now, as an adult, something else happens. And you are not moving forward, not because of just what happened, but because
Mm-hmm.
of other things that have happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, in counseling or in therapy, they want to deal with that a lot of those
Yeah.
past traumas that you
They
have
make
been.
you recount, accept, face it, and dwell in there
Yeah,
with
yeah,
your
yeah.
pain
So
and all
they
that.
want to, yeah, because those things they are deep rooted in you, but you've not dealt with them. You just be
Mm-hmm.
on and moving on until a time comes that
You
other
let
things happen. And even though you are reacting to what happens now, but when they begin to really dig into it, they realize that this is not just what you are reacting to.
mm-hmm.
There are other things that needed to be dealt with
Mm-hmm.
before you can even deal with this one.
Mm-hmm.
So when there are those kind of deep rooted issues and emotional issues, we normally would recommend that you go for therapy and counseling. But if you've had a loss
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a deep and emotional issue, I mean, a loss is an emotional issue, but there are no other issues associated with it. Like you are not dealing with any past trauma. It's just that
Right.
this loss happened. Maybe I lost maybe you lost your spouse or something. And because of that, you're not able to pick yourself up and move forward. You lack that motivation, or one thing with grief is that grief can often make us feel like as if we've lost our purpose, especially when you've been associated with somebody. There's this close bond between the two of you. Many times people can't pick themselves up and move forward. So grief coaching will provide this non-judgmental space where you'll be able to vent, cry, but at the end of the day, the coach is just there supporting you, showing you strategies, asking you questions like open-ended questions. Because in coaching, we don't really tell you what to do. We ask you questions that will make you think and bring out the solutions yourself. But that support is there, that you are not alone. Because one thing that is very prominent in grief is that when you lose somebody, you have a lot of people supporting you. But it's like once the funeral is done,
Mm.
everybody leaves. People assume that it's over, the grief is
Mm-hmm.
over. But the truth is that is actually when the grief starts, because that is when you
Mm-hmm.
feel it. I remember like when I lost my daughter, there were a lot of people always coming to my house. And it was shocking to me. Not so much of a shock, but I was still a bit surprised that after the funeral, nobody, it was just us, the family members, that came back home. And life started from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you need a grief coach, because a grief coach is like that friend that is there with you even when everybody have left. The person is still there supporting you, asking you, are you okay? How can I help you? Encouraging you to just keep moving on, helping you to think of what you can do to pick
Mm.
yourself up and move forward.
You just brought so much back to my mind. I have lost a
Mm.
spouse. It's been several years.
Okay.
My son is 14 right now. He was 5 months old then. And I think
Mm.
looking back, I would have used a grief coach, right?
Mm.
But when I look back at the way I behaved at certain points, because like you say, when everything is said and done, you go back home by yourself. It's just you or it's just the family. The feeling is different. The emotion is different, right? Because
Yeah.
your family seems to just be there and say, okay, it's done, but they
Mm.
don't step into fill in the gap of your emotional imbalance, which is what a
Mm.
grief coach would do. So this is
Yeah.
something I think I would
Mm.
recommend to people who face profound loss in their life. Because when I look back at my own situation, I go, wow,
Mm.
I would have done something really drastic had I not been sheltered by the baby I had, that I had to look at and see how I can protect, you know. And I know this is Talk to Me Africa. We're going to talk about how we Africans deal with things like that. But I think where we come from, we are expected to be strong after an incident. We don't
Yeah.
see the fact that if a woman has lost a spouse or a
Mm.
man has lost a spouse, there is
Mm.
something they can do to help them. You're just supposed to cope and keep going,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Anyway, before we get into that part of it, which I'm going to address later about the African culture and grief. So
Mm.
you've just intimated that you became a grief coach after you lost your daughter. Is that what motivated you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm a certified coach. I'm a member of the Maxwell Leadership organization,
Were
and
you
I've been
before you lost your daughter or after you,
Mm,
before you joined?
um about it actually. I think sometimes God just orchestrates certain things, because
Mm,
I joined Maxwell Leadership, I think toward the end of July 2019,
mm-hmm,
and my daughter passed on the 5th of August 2019, just like a few weeks just after I joined.
mm-hmm,
So I've never thought of it this way, but now that you ask this question, I'm just thinking that God just actually led me to join that group.
Line stuff for you, yeah.
Yeah, and then my daughter passed. So that year, I didn't really like go into the course fully, but it was the following year, and I launched in and I did my training as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I, based on my own experience,
Mm-hmm.
I also realized that I can help people because I have an
Right.
experience of grief. And my own grief, it's actually like in terms of with my daughter, it's not just losing her. Like when I was talking about what about grief, I say grief is when you lose something that once was,
Mm.
or something that you wish was and is not.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I mean by that is that like my daughter that passed, she was born with very severe disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
When she was born, I grieved.
Mm-hmm.
I grieved for her health because it was like this is a child, an innocent child born into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And right from the onset, the child seemed to be disadvantaged. She was missing some limbs. There were a lot of complications and all that. And the prognosis they gave us was hopeless. So I grieved because I didn't even know what the future had for me and her. I didn't know how we're going to navigate everything. I grieved for what she did not have. She was missing some limbs and all that. So that was I went through that grief and God took me through a process. And actually that's what led to me writing my first book. He gave me comfort
Mm-hmm.
because it was in the process of that grieving and as a person of faith, spending time with God, that God showed me how to navigate the grief and I was comforted.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she passed again, I also grieved. So, but of course, when she was born, I was doing some things, not really grief coaching, but still helping people because apart from grief coaching, I am a motivational speaker and I like helping people to overcome adversity. So I was just helping people, how can you turn your pain into gain and all that. But I went properly into grief coaching after she passed.
Okay. I read
Yeah.
your story about your daughter, and you said that when you had her, they didn't bring
Mhm.
her to you right away, and they were asking you
Mhm.
all kinds of questions like, have you had A
Mhm.
or B or C in your family? You said no.
Mhm.
And then it
Mhm.
took you a while to want to see the baby that you had given birth to. I say this
Yeah.
because I've had many parents on the show who are
Mhm.
parents of special needs children. And just like
Mhm.
you said, they tell me that when you have such a special need child, you grieve several times.
Mhm.
Especially, I had one who had lost special need child. You grieve, like you say, when they are born. You grieve when
Mhm.
they grow up and they start facing all kinds of discrimination. You grieve for them,
Mhm.
and then you
Mhm.
grieve again when they struggle to overcome these situations in life,
Mhm.
discriminations and their different abilities. And then when they
Mhm.
pass, you grieve. So it's like a grieving sequence in your life. How do you cope with that as a parent?
Yeah, it's quite a challenge um caring for a special needs child, raising a
Mm,
special needs child because and it depends on the kind of disability. Like if it's something that is very severe and
mm-hmm,
they're very sickly and you have to be in and out of hospital,
mm-hmm,
it can be a very emotional kind of roller coaster.
mm-hmm,
You're up, you're down, you don't know what is going to happen, there's anxiety here and all that. Like I said, it's difficult, but I've learned to like trust God.
mm-hmm,
I've learned to walk with Him and I've learned to just have faith in Him. So I think for me, as a person of faith,
mm-hmm,
my walk with God, my relationship with God helped me to be able to manage the situation.
mm-hmm.
Because when things seem hopeless and when you don't know what to do, at that point, there's really nothing I can do than just to cast on
Right.
prayers and pray and just hope for the best and just ask God for strength. So I think one of the things that I did a lot of times when I had my daughter was like, there are some times that the only prayer I can pray for the day is that God just help me, strength, strength. So just praying for that strength. And even though it's a simple prayer, it's very powerful
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes I just see myself going through the situation and coming out and not even knowing how did I do it.
Right.
Yeah, because I remember one situation. I was living in Dublin at the time. My daughter was born in Dublin. So I was living in Dublin at the time. And then my daughter she was admitted in the hospital. When she was born, they said there was a little hole in her heart, but she didn't have a surgery because They said they will give her time to see that as she grows up, if it will close up.
Mm-hmm.
So in the early ages of her life, she was always prone to a lot of chest infections. So she was admitted in the hospital on this day, and then I stayed with her throughout in the hospital, didn't sleep. And the following day, then we had a church in Dublin then, and I was supposed to preach in the church, and I left the hospital, showered, and came to the church and the church service. And when I look at it, I don't even know how I had the strength, because like going through what I was going through and then coming on Sunday morning to preach
Yeah,
and
to
encourage
preach.
people.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that I say. All I just do is like in situations like that, it's just depending on God
Mm.
and just asking him for strength. And he actually gives strength, because like the Bible will tell us that like my grace is sufficient for you. Let me just use that scripture.
Mm.
Yeah. So whatever we are going through, if God has given you a child like that, he normally will give you the grace to be able to
Mm.
cope with and just go through the situation. Yeah.
Are you a pastor?
Yes, I am.
Wow. So is it true they say that God doesn't give to you what is more than you to handle?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so, because like the Bible tells us that there's no temptation that comes to us that is uncommon to man.
Mm-hmm.
And with every temptation, God will also make a way of escape. So he
Mm-hmm.
will give you the grace, and it's either he gives you the grace to bear it, or he makes a way for you to escape it. So I believe that whatever comes your way is because God knows that you can handle it.
That's right. Let me talk
Yeah.
about this attitude that we have in African communities, especially back home in Africa. I mean, I'm from Cameroon and you are
Mhm.
from Nigeria, so I know that we have common cultural beliefs and practices. As
Mm,
a grief coach, you're helping people to move forward. So what you're
mhm,
doing is letting them know that you've been here, it has
mhm,
happened. It's okay not to dwell in that situation, but it's okay to take a step or two forward, right? And
mhm,
sometimes in our cultures, taking that step or two forward, people always question, but why so soon? You have to sit
mhm,
there and let your grief marinate and let
mhm,
it cook. People should see you mourn for a year, for 2 years to show them that
mhm,
you are really in pain. Now, as an African and
mhm.
helping people to overcome grief, how do you tie that cultural belief with your work in helping people to get away from that grief-stricken situation?
Yeah, as Africans, I know that our culture is very strong
Mm,
and we like traditions and all that.
mm-hmm,
But the truth is that grief is very personal.
mm-hmm.
And many times, if you are not strong, you can just be tossed to and fro when you're
Absolutely.
going through, yeah,
Yeah.
when you're going through grief.
Mm-hmm.
So what I normally tell people is to be yourself.
Mm,
Although there are certain situations that, especially like if you are in the remote villages in Africa,
mm-hmm.
there are certain things that you may just have to conform during that period just to get away. For instance, like a woman loses her husband and you have to go and bury him in the village, and you go there because there are more people that you are contending with. There are certain things that you may just like conform, but that doesn't mean you agree with everything. If something is against your faith, because like there are situations that a man will die and they will wash his body and they want you to drink the water
Yep. Welcome to
just to
Africa.
prove that
You
just to
didn't
prove
kill
that
him.
you're not the one that killed him.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't drink that water.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I will encourage other women to do. But like I say, you need to be strong, because if you are not strong, they can bend you around a lot. So you have to be strong. But if it is certain things like another culture that we have in Africa, I don't know how it is in Cameroon, but in Nigeria, when you lose somebody and you are coming, like like usually mourners will gather even like days or weeks
Mm-hmm.
before, and
Professional
once the person
mourners.
dies,
They have their
everybody
alternative reasons for being there anyway.
exactly, everybody will gather. For some people is to eat free food for that
Mm-hmm.
period before the funeral happens. The culture in my place is that anyone that is coming for that funeral for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
Once you are getting close to the compound, you have to raise a lamentation and begin to
Yep.
scream,
So they know
maybe
you're
hit
here.
yourself on the
Mm-hmm.
ground, all that. Like, it's funny because we like a lot of drama.
Yeah, we
For me,
do.
I'm not that kind of person. I remember when my dad passed and I came, like I was just quiet and everything, and people just be looking at you and like, "Ah, is this one
Like you,
normal?"
you don't feel the pain. She's
Yeah,
not
like,
serious.
exactly,
It doesn't hurt her. When they
exactly.
act differently to grief, they don't all expect you to act the same way like every other person.
Exactly. And one thing they don't even realize is that when you internalize grief, it's even more difficult that somebody that is screaming, at least you are screaming out the pain.
There you go.
But the person that keeps quiet is going through a lot, but you
A
don't
lot.
know.
Yeah.
So the story I was even telling, when my dad died, I didn't do all that drama.
Mm-hmm.
Then when my mom also passed, like 3 years later, one of my aunts had to call me and and teach me that when you get home, this is how you have to behave. Even though, like, I'm not that kind of person, so I tried to cry, but I couldn't do it like them. So I just left. I just behaved. I just kept quiet and was just crying quietly the way that is me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for us, as Africans, you just have to be yourself.
You have to.
You just have
Yeah.
to be yourself because at the end of the day, the drama that, in fact, some parts of Africa, they will even hire like professional mourners.
There are professional mourners that they will hire to come cry and display and just show that they're able to.
Exactly. Yeah. So I encourage people to be themselves. Yeah, just take your time. Grieve in a way, like there's a difference between mourning and grieving anyway. Mourning is the outward expression of the grief. So
Mm-hmm.
what they expect us in Africa to do, the crying, the lamentation,
Mm-hmm.
the wearing of black clothes, all those are signs that you are mourning. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, do what agrees with you.
Mm-hmm.
You may run into problems with people and all that, but that is where the strength has to come.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying disregard culture or
Mm-hmm.
disrespect people, but respectfully stand for what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Stand for what agrees with your personality. Stand for what is authentic to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if you are screaming, in fact, somebody told me a story that because of this expectation that you have to cry and lament and scream, she said, and sometimes a distant relative with that, you don't even know this person, and
Ah.
they expect you to cry for the person and hit yourself on the ground. So this person told me that anytime she's going for a funeral, she would just think of her brother that died, and that
Several
is
years
what
ago.
that is what brings tears to her eyes. And then even though she's screaming, "Oh, Mary, Mary, Mary," it's in her
But she's
head,
thinking
she's
about
crying
her
for her
brother.
brother. She's not crying for Mary.
I could
So
go on and
yes.
on about this grief and African culture, but let me address what I have online. All Mercy, Dr. Mercy of All Mercy Psychiatry and Integrative Care says that I respect grief coaches. They are much needed. I agree. They are really much needed. And she says grief is personally expressed and should not be judged. But we Africans, we judge the way people mourn a lot. And you made a very good point. Mourning is that outward expression. Grieving is what you feel
Hmm.
inside you. Sometimes you're not able to express that. It doesn't mean that you're not grieving. It's just the way that you are able to express the pain that you feel during a loss.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to really respect that. Is there a guilt that people should feel for leaving that place of grief and moving forward? Because here is Talk to Me Africa. African culture wants you to sit there and stay there. Should we feel guilty for saying that, okay, I lost my husband and it's 3 months, I want to smile again? Should we feel
Hmm.
guilty for doing that? I lost my child, it's been a year, I want to laugh again.
Hmm. We shouldn't feel guilty,
Mm,
but guilt, like there's a work that was done by Elizabeth Kubler about the 7 stages. Okay, she did the original work was the 5 stages of grief,
5 stages of
and then
grief here.
yeah, and then there was the modified version of it, which was the 7 stages,
Mm-hmm,
and then guilt was one of the things that was added to that 7 stages of grief.
mm-hmm.
So naturally, you tend to feel guilty when somebody dies because you are feeling
Absolutely.
oh, did I do enough? Did I not do enough? And then
Mm-hmm.
people now want to even make it worse for you by making those statements like, oh, why should you be smiling? Why are you not wearing
Mm.
black?
That,
Why are
is
you
that all
eating?
you've cried?
Why?
Is that all the tears you can pour?
Exactly. So people even want to add more guilt to what you are already feeling.
Mm.
So for me, what I decided to do intentionally was not to allow myself to feel guilty. Because when my daughter died, like sometimes this feeling of guilt want to come, but I know that I did the best that I could for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you are able to evaluate yourself and know that what I did was the best I could do. Sometimes you wish you could have done more,
Wow.
but I always tell people that if you knew better, you'd have done better.
That's right.
So if you didn't do what you think you should have done, you did what you knew how to do at the point. And guilt is not going to change anything. So I think it's about consciously letting yourself not be guilty. And I also tell people that this person that you loved that died, would they be happy seeing you helplessly stuck and not being able to move forward because they are no longer there? Because somebody that loves you will want to see your happiness, they want to see you move forward. So I believe, like for instance, you lost your spouse. If he really loves you, he wouldn't want you to be stuck because he's not there. He
Mm-hmm.
will be happy to see you that you are moving forward, you're able to carry yourself again, even when he's not there. And then sometimes people feel that the way you show that you love somebody is when you let yourself become helpless, become like you don't smile again, you are
Don't
sad
take care
because
of
that person is
yourself
not
any
there.
longer.
Yeah, you don't take care of yourself anymore because that person is not there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe that. I believe that naturally guilt want to creep in. You shouldn't let it take root in your life. You should be able to like work on yourself and move on, because that is the only way that you can heal. Because as long as you hold on to guilt and you are not letting yourself be happy, you're not letting yourself live again, then you're not going to be able to heal and you're not going to be able to make progress after that loss.
That's right. Now, in our African context, it seems like women are made to feel the guilt more when it comes to grieving than the men.
Yeah.
Now, when a woman loses her husband, she's expected to wear that sackcloth for a couple of years, don't even talk to a man or smile or give a handshake to a man for a couple of years. You cannot be seen even just chatting with a man for a couple of years. You cannot be seen dressed in some colorful outfit for as long as possible. But the man seems to be given the leeway to live his life a month or two after the wife is gone. I've seen the situation where a man got married a couple of months after the woman is gone. And African culture seems to applaud for the man. Oh, that's a man. He's doing good. He's moved on. He can take care of another woman. Why do you think that we as Africans put women in this guilt space when it comes to grieving?
As you know, African culture generally look at women as not really equal to men. I think that's just
Yeah.
the thing there. So I think it's just our mentality,
Mm-hmm.
just the way things have been for a long time. But I think things are beginning to change gradually. So I think it's about women helping themselves. Let me
Standing
put
up
it
for
that way.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, standing up for themselves, helping themselves. Because, okay, look at, for instance, the African culture, especially if the man is the breadwinner, he dies, and in some places they throw the woman out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And they still, when they throw her out of the house, they still want her to be mourning for the man that
Mm-hmm.
passed. So I think the women just have to learn to fend for themselves and stand for themselves and help themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
the culture itself does not really help us right now. So I think it's as women begin to rise and stand for themselves
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that their life does not fall apart if somebody has gone or if their spouse has gone. Because at the end of the day, the spouse, the man's life will not fall apart. Just like you said, after a couple of months, a lot of them remarry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the woman now that is head bound and all that. So you just need to take care of yourself and just realize that nobody can love you and care more for you like you will do for yourself. So you just
That's
have to,
right.
yeah, and you just have to do it for yourself.
And I also
And
think that the
support as
women
well.
should
Yeah.
support each other because, from my experience, and my mother also experienced this when my father passed,
Mm.
The people who would implement and force you to do some of this
Mm.
uncalled for tradition are other women.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we, the women, have to say that just because, that person lost their spouse a couple of years ago and they went through that, they don't
Mm.
have to enable the next person, the next widow, to go through the same thing. But
Yeah.
women, we seem to be the ones who are enforcing the rules. Oh, she has to drink that water to prove she didn't kill him. She has to sit in that corner in the dark room. She cannot get out after 5 months. She has to wear. We don't see men doing that
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
African setting. So I
Mm.
think it's about time for us, the women, to
Mm.
help women make the change. You'll never
Yeah.
see a man come and say, let's shave your head after your husband is gone. It is a woman who brings a blade and say, hey, it's time to do this. So I think the onus, the power, I'll give the mantle on the women to say, hey, let's do this and let's help the woman, because it doesn't. You also have children. Even though you've gone through a certain ritual, it hurts you. You don't have to enforce it on another woman, because guess what? You have children, you have nieces, you have people you love who are females who might also face that in the future. Our culture is beautiful, but culture has to evolve. And sometimes in certain cases, like the culture of widowhood, only women can
Mm.
help change and make those cultural
Yeah,
practices
absolutely. I
evolve.
agree with you. Absolutely. I think that support, we need that support. We need to come together. One thing I believe personally is that, and that is my ministry is called my Pain Your Gain Ministries, because I believe that if I've gone through pain, somebody else should not go through the same pain I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
I should use my pain to become the gain of somebody. I should let somebody not, if I can help it, I shouldn't let somebody else experience the pain that I've been through. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, just like you said, when they go through pain, this person too must suffer what I suffered.
What I went through, she has to also,
Yeah,
and,
she has
and,
to
and I
go
can,
through
I
it.
can
Yeah,
understand if it's a revenge situation. You
yeah,
hurt me, I want to hurt you back. But in this case, it's just an innocent person
yeah,
going through pain. And you should be there to
exactly.
console them instead of enforcing the pain, because you
Yeah,
also experienced it in the past.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's good that we're discussing this now, and I believe that as many people that are hearing this, is
Mm-hmm.
something for every one of us to begin to think deeply about. That we should come together, we should support one another. We
Mm.
shouldn't we shouldn't intensify the pain of another woman who is already going through grief by
Right.
enforcing some unnecessary things,
Mm-hmm.
putting some unnecessary burdens on her.
That's
We
right.
should think of how we can alleviate that pain and make her life a bit easier. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what we should be doing.
We
So
should
yeah,
do that, yeah. And not to dwell more on this. I mean, I grew up in Cameroon. I've seen situations where a man loses a child or loses a spouse. The other men that get to the home, what do they come to do? They come to take you to go drink a beer. Man, let's see how we can help calm this pain. But when the women rush to the house, they're there to make sure that you don't get out. You're confined. You sit here. You do certain things. Women,
mm,
do better. All right.
that's
And,
that's
and
true.
online, Dr. Mercy says some African cultures have restricted or placed biases through
Mm.
gender when grieving is concerned. That is so true. It is
That's
something
very true.
across the
Yeah,
African continent. Yeah. Yeah.
that's very
Let's move on,
true.
talk about your daughter a little bit here. And you just mentioned, how she came into the world and you grieved when she was born and all that. But you used that pain to something good. You began a foundation for her.
Mm.
You call it the Grace Foundation, right?
Yeah, Grace Miracle Ehigocho Foundation. Those are her names. Yeah.
Grace Miracle Egocho Foundation. So how is it doing now?
Yeah, the foundation is doing well. Yeah, the work that we do is mostly in Africa.
Mhm.
So the purpose why I focus on Africa was that being originally from Africa and knowing the situation that people living with disabilities in Africa go through, I just wanted to make life a bit easier for them.
For some people, yeah.
Yeah, so for at least the people that we can reach out to, for as many
Mm-hmm.
as we can help, yeah. Because Grace she was born in Ireland, and then we lived in Ireland for like 11 years before we moved to the UK. So in this part of the world, we get support from the government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like she has wheelchair. The house we live is adapted. I had a car that was adapted for wheelchair when she was still alive and all that. She goes to school, they come to pick her, take her to school. So they
Social
give you that kind of
services.
support.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that even with that support, it was still difficult
Yeah.
because the nights that she's not sleeping, I'm not sleeping.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of hospital appointments that I do here and there. There's still something that I'm expected to do. The way her food is not the same way our own food is. So there are still other things that are required. So it was still difficult. So the reason why I decided to like do this foundation and help people in Africa is that I just think of it that with all the support I'm getting, if it's still this difficult
Mm.
to raise a child living with disabilities, then I wonder how people in Africa are coping when they don't get any support from any government.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of people even helping them, they make life worse
Oh,
for them.
yeah. Mm.
They these people are ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
They, sometimes in Africa we have some of these superstitious belief that when a child is born with disability, sometimes some people look at that child as a witch, or they look at the mother as a witch, or they think something you did something wrong, and this is why
You're
that is why
cursed.
you're
Mm-hmm.
punished. Yeah, so they go through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That is why we started that foundation. Yeah, so Grace passed in 2019.
At what
I
age?
She was 15.
Wow.
Yeah, she was 15. She was born in 2004, so she was 15 when she passed. So we started the foundation like a year or two later.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done two outreaches in Nigeria. Our focus is to go to one African country every year. So last year we were in Sierra Leone, and then this year we are planning to go to Ghana. So what we do is like we get a venue, partner with a local church or organization where we are going to, and then reach out to get these people living with disabilities. Our focus is to provide aids for people that their parents or their guardians cannot afford to. So we are not just helping everybody living with disabilities, but people that are less privileged. Because, like, if for instance, if you go to Africa, like if you go to Nigeria, and maybe you go to a gathering like a church gathering, you'll be surprised that for these children living with disabilities, even when they are big, they are still having to be carried
Yeah.
because basic things like wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
their parents cannot afford it. So they are still having to be carried. And then for some of them, they even just lock them up in one
Yeah.
room and don't bring them
Mm-hmm.
out at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
I none of situations that people that you think you know are your friends, you never know that they even have a family member with disability
Because
until you visit
yeah,
their
they're
home
locked up.
because
Mm-hmm.
they lock them up and all that. So we one of our aims is to be a voice to these people. So what we are doing right now is in stages. We're in that at that stage that we're providing aids. We're having this outreach meeting where we want to make them feel loved. And the feedback we get is just amazing because
Yeah.
they are always so happy that apart from the aids we provide for them, it's like somebody remember me, somebody show me love because we want to spread the unconditional love of God. We want to make them know that God loves them. And they actually feel loved when we reach out like that. And then when we gather, we also want to hear their stories. So, what happened? Were you born like this? And you hear so many different stories that are very, very touching. So it's like it's a very fulfilling work,
That's
and I'm
right.
doing
And even
that.
if you
Yeah,
touch one life, you've touched
yeah,
a lot of lives because that one person's life is
yeah,
affecting the lives of so many who are there to support that one life. You know, each time
yeah.
I have a show about disability or somebody who has that experience, I
Mm,
recount this story of when I was a teenager in
mm,
Cameroon. You know, we walked to church. There was
mm,
this house we always walk by on
mm,
Sundays. And now looking back, that
mm,
man, that young man, was
mm,
disabled. There was some mental issue going on. I think it was a mental disability because he looked like physically okay. And he was
mm,
chained, physically chained.
mm,
And when we're walking by, he will make some funny noises. And we just call him Chris Man, you know, in Camera, Chris Man, Chris Man. You just walk by.
mm,
But he was chained by the side of the house. He wasn't in the house. I don't know. Looking back, was he destructive in the house? I don't know. The way that we treat some people
mm,
because they have different abilities in our African communities. I tell you,
mm.
we need to start revising them. And
Yeah.
like you said earlier, if you don't do something because you did not know, when we know better, we should do better. A lot of us
Mm,
have now been educated about disabilities, be it physical or mental. And so we need to know how to treat them better. In our
Yeah.
community, we have a lot of children who are mentally disabled, I mean, mentally challenged. You have, let me just say, autism, for example. The way that some of these kids with children in Africa should not be the way that we treat them with our own mentality that haven't been changed here in the United States or in the West. So what you're doing is great because when you go and help them, you bring them to the forefront, they tell their stories. People tend to see that, oh, it's normal. You could be
Yeah.
born like that. It doesn't mean that your mom did not do something that the family requested from her, or they didn't pay the full bride price, or somebody was cursing your family. It can happen to anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So grace lives on. At the same
Mm.
time, you are changing the lives of some people in Africa. And moreover, you are educating people and
Yeah.
changing their mentality. Thank you for doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's true because each time we have a meeting, it might not be a lot of people, but yeah, like you say, it's one person at a time.
Mhm,
It's one person at a time because somebody comes there and by the time they hear the story, just like this person is just like me.
mhm,
It just so happened that they are different. They didn't make themselves and they did nobody wants to be in that situation.
mhm,
So the least we can do is just to show them love and accept them.
mhm.
That is the least that we can do. So it's
Yeah.
not to begin to just call them names and sometimes in Africa, some children can even be very rude. They even throw stones at these people, do all
I
manner of
remember when I was really a little girl, I think I was like 10, 12 or something. We had this little boy who had like, he would always drool and he had a physical disability and we would just throw stuff at him and call him wata wata mop. Looking back, I'm like,
yeah.
we need the education. When I came to America and I realized how a
Mm,
5-year-old would tell you in detail what they
mm,
are sick of, I was impressed. I'm like, wow, they know
mm,
what they are sick of in
mm.
so much detail. And
Yeah.
sometimes somebody like an adult in Africa who has some health issues, they don't even know what they're sick of because we have neglected them from the time they were born. We don't
Exactly.
educate ourselves, we as a parent, about their illness. And so we don't educate them. We just call them, that child who has something.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember somebody was telling me about like a child that has autism.
Mm-hmm.
The way they'll be beating this child in school because they feel, you are not learning. How can you not see
Yeah,
this? How can you not
yeah.
do that one? Yeah, but I think the awareness is beginning to come on now
It
anyway in some
is. It
now. It's
is.
beginning to
It
come on,
is.
but we just need to do more and we
Yeah.
just need to spread the word more that
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
belong to a WhatsApp group of Cameroon community. Mostly they are in Cameroon and also from other African countries. And I've had two guests from that group who are from South Africa and I think from the Congo to just
okay.
talk about disability. That is a typical African group. And I'm so impressed at what they share because times do change. We have to also change our mentality and the way we treat people in our communities because of the way they look. Let's talk
That's
about your
true.
book. You're an author. Wow. He gave
Yeah.
me comfort,
Mm.
Mama Grace, and Through the Storm. So the first book that you wrote, was it He Gave Me Comfort after you had Grace? Is that the first book?
Yes, yes, that's the first book I wrote. Yeah, I have copies of my book here. So this is He Gave Me Comfort. So that is me and Grace there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as you can see, she has just one finger on each hand. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so this book He Gave Me Comfort took me several years to write because I was
Mm-hmm.
very reluctant. Like, like what we just talked about, like you have a child that is very different,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of reaction you get, even like living in Ireland, then each time we go out, because she was very tiny.
Mm-hmm. You want
So
to
when she was,
shield them. You don't want them to be out there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like when she was born, I remember when she was like 6 months, she was very tiny that when I go out with her and people see her, they say, oh, like the difference between the Europeans, or maybe let me say the Irish people in Africa is that in Africa, when they say, they'll look at her and then they want to run away. But the, the white man will look at her
Be
and
curious.
be curious. Oh, she's so cute. How old is she? And then they are looking, they are asking more questions and all that. And then when she's 6 months, and I say, oh, she's 6 months, they say 6 weeks. And those things used to break my heart because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, God, how can a child that is 6 months be looking like a 6 weeks old child?
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of things used to make me to cry a lot when she was very small. And like I said, it was going through the process of God took me through a process, which I wrote in the book anyway, that I now had to build that strength. And I started like exposing her. And I discovered that when I started leaving her open, people didn't even see the difference anymore. When I will cover her and I don't want them to see the hand and everything, that is when they'll be asking me questions.
Mm-hmm.
So when I felt that I should write the book, I didn't really want to like put my story out there because in the book I was very vulnerable. I just
You
shared
have to be,
so much.
yes, if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
write
yeah.
your
But that's
book.
the only
It's
way
very
I can help
personal.
people. Yeah, so yeah, and it was a surprise to me that just after I released the book, I started getting feedbacks from people. People were calling me from different parts of the world because the book I launched it in Ireland then in 2011. And like a few days later, somebody called me from Italy. I was like, yo, somebody gave me your book. I was like, really? I think she had a child with autism. And then she
Mm-hmm.
was start telling me her story. So people will now call me and be telling me their stories because
Mm-hmm.
they read my own story as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think and a lot of people will tell me that, oh, when I pick this book, I can't drop it because it's like they want to finish reading the story and
Mm-hmm.
see how it
Mm-hmm.
ends and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Yeah, so
Wow.
yeah.
And Mama
So,
Grace, what is that one about?
yeah, Mama Grace is my third one, is this
Mm-hmm.
one.
Yeah.
Mama Grace is I wrote this book after Grace has passed,
Mm-hmm.
but the story is not I use Grace's story to just teach about understanding the grace of God.
Okay. Okay.
So Mama Grace is like the subtitle is understanding and living out the grace of God. So it's more about like when we're talking about people with special needs children, how do they cope?
Yeah.
Is the grace of God.
Yeah. So she's
Yeah,
Grace,
so
your daughter, the grace of God. You're playing with that words
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
just yeah,
yeah. So
that
I
word.
play so I use examples of my experience with grace
Mm-hmm.
to just teach us how to tap into the grace of God.
Grace of God. That's
Because
beautiful.
whatever the situation we are going through, His grace
Mm-hmm.
is sufficient for us.
But
Yeah.
you were a
So
pastor before you had Grace.
um we actually just went into ministry just before I had grace. Yeah. We
Wow.
went into
God was
ministry.
preparing you for a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
your
And then
third book, Through the Storm.
yeah, through the storm is fiction.
What?
Yeah,
It's fiction. Wow. Tell me about
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's fiction. So I wrote this book when I was going through a lot of storm as well.
Mhm.
Then
Wow.
the storm is my second book. I wrote it before Mama Grace. So
Mm-hmm.
I was going through a lot of storm. And I just had to write fiction just to because I just find that for me, writing is therapeutic. So
Mm-hmm.
as I write, I release my emotions. Like when I see writing as a win-win situation because
Yeah.
I'm writing, I'm people are learning from my experience, and I'm also releasing my emotions as I'm writing. And
That's
people
right.
reading it are also gleaning from the experience and they are
Mm-hmm.
learning like things they can use to also know how to navigate and live their lives. So yeah, so Through the Storm is fiction. There's
Mm-hmm.
a story about a young girl that lost her dad, and then like what we're just talking about in African culture, how the parents threw how the family threw the woman out,
Out. Mm-hmm.
and then people that were living in the urban area going to good schools, they had to come back to the village.
Mm-hmm.
How her uncle
How
had to
your
like
life changes
yeah,
because of a
yeah, yeah.
tragic
So
situation.
so it was she went through a lot of storm, and then at the end of the day, yeah. So that is what this.
Wow.
So my books, I write to inspire people. Like I said, I like to help people overcome adversity,
That's good.
be it grief or whatever challenge you are going through.
Yeah.
So be it my speaking, my writing, my
Mm-hmm.
coaching, is all about helping
Yeah.
people navigate
Well,
adversity.
when I said fiction, wow, is because my guest on the show tomorrow is a fiction writer from Cameroon, and he has a series of books called the
Okay.
Soulless, I think the Soulless series. And
Mhm.
I mean, I have the book, I have a hard time reading. I'm like, how do you just write something that is not real? But it is so real because I
Yeah.
pause. Because with fiction, you have to be very creative and use
Yeah.
certain words that have to really pull that person through because when you're
Mm.
writing a story about, let's say, the one about Grace, He gave
Mm-hmm.
me comfort. You can easily just remember stuff and write, you know. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're writing fiction, your imagination has to go wild. You have to convince me, the reader, that
Mm-hmm.
this story is worth reading and that the villain, or whoever is the main character is something you
Mm-hmm.
have to really follow. So I can't wait to talk to
Yeah.
this young man tomorrow about how do you write so
Yeah.
well? And it's a whole series of books.
Yeah.
That is
But
wonderful.
fiction is still about everyday experience that people go through.
But in a more imaginative way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a more like imaginative way. Yeah. So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot just write an abstract fiction that is not relatable. It's still
Mm-hmm.
going to be things that you see around. You are not using a particular person's story, but you are being
Mm-hmm.
creative in trying to write a story that is enjoyable to the reader and it's
Mm-hmm.
also relatable and it's something that
Mm-hmm.
they can learn from. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Dr. Mercy, she said writing can be therapeutic, and she too has a book that she's just released, and we cannot wait
Okay.
to launch the book online as well. She's a mental health practitioner, so if you check Mercy Ngesang on Amazon, you find her books. You can also find
Yeah.
Eyum's book on Amazon. You can find her book, Eyum Ejiga. He Gave Me Comfort, Mama
Yeah.
Grace, and Through the Storm. All those books you can find them on Amazon. Thank you so much for putting your experience, into books that will last a lifetime or beyond your lifetime and beyond our lifetime. So thank you. And thank you for sharing
Mm.
Gracie's life with us through stories and even through pictures. Because I went through your social media, I'm like, wow. It takes courage, like you say, to put your baby out there whom is going to be judged, is going to be criticized, is going to be at some point insulted, and they're going to use that baby to even insult you as well. People do that.
Yeah.
But thank you for being so
Yeah.
courageous and doing that and being so vulnerable.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And that actually helped some people. I had a friend that had a family member
Hmm.
that had special needs, and they never used to like. I didn't even know until much later. So
Wow.
I think putting Grace out there have also like encouraged people like that because she not even came to like the first time she started seeing me putting Grace's picture, like she was surprised and said, are you able to do this? And I
Hmm.
think with time also she started also like talking about this her family member and everything online as well. So I think one person doing it is able to help others to do
Yeah,
it. And
I agree. You're
yeah,
touching
we need to be proud
lives.
of everybody. And actually, the reason or what helped me in raising Grace was a story, was a book somebody gave me
Mm-hmm.
when Grace was born and I was in the hospital and I was very devastated. And this lady gave me a book by Lena Maria.
Mm-hmm.
Lena Maria was born without arms and one leg that ends at the knee. So
Mm-hmm.
she only have one half leg. She's from Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
So she wrote a book, Footnotes. And this lady gave me that book to read when Grace was born.
Wow.
And when I read that book, that in fact, she was writing
Changed you.
about her mother's experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother's experience was so similar to what I was going through at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it felt like I was reading my own story. That is the way I put it. And that book, like in my book, sorry, my book, he gave me comfort. I talk about in one chapter, I say, no more tears.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I read that book that I stopped crying, or I told myself I was going
Wow.
to stop crying. And that was when I began to receive comfort because
Mm.
that book showed me how to how to raise Grace, how to like the mother was so proud of her, even though she had one half leg when they go to restaurant, she would sit at the table, she'll be using her leg, that half leg to eat. And everybody will be looking at them like, are these people crazy? And the mother would just ignore them and build that confidence in her. And it was based on that I told myself that I'm not going to hide Grace. Anybody that does not want to be my friend because of her, fine and go, let
You
them go.
should
I don't
leave
need
you
such
alone.
people in
Yeah,
my life. Yeah,
I
and
hear
yeah,
you.
God helped me. And yeah.
Yeah. And online, Dr. Messi said, I cannot find the proper words to thank you for sharing impactful story. I tell you, it takes a
Wow.
lot, especially if I had a guest on my show
Mm,
who said that when she began dating, she would
mm,
only date people who liked her brother because her brother was disabled. He passed
mm,
away. And in order for her to know that you want to date me and you really like me, you have to like my brother. She'll take you to their house and you have to
wow.
meet her brother who was nonverbal, blind, autistic, and wheelchair bound. You
Mm,
have to meet him and create some
mm,
likeness. before
Mm.
she even says, I can even hang out with you, because that was part of her. And
Mm.
given where we come from in Africa, people will use your family's disability to insult you. And that
Mm.
was a South African guest. It's the same thing. She's like, people would always say, oh, I can't come to you because you have that brother who's like that. That's my blood. So you gotta, show that you care about my entire family before I can even date you. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing that. And now I do follow you on social media, and I want to read somebody sent this to you. I found out on your Facebook page. It says that, dear Coach Eyum, Nigerians will turn a funeral into a full-blown party. Jollof rice, small chops,
Mm.
dancing, wearing aswebi,
Mm.
etc.
Mm.
They say we are celebrating life, but how do you celebrate when your heart is breaking? The
Mm.
first spoonful of rice still chokes my throat. Some things, our tradition, but grief doesn't follow rule. So we can
Mm.
always change our culture to have a
Mm.
beautiful ashwebi, like he says, at the funerals. But why can't we change our culture to say that let them grieve the way they want to?
Mm.
Instead of expecting you to roll on the floor and scream
Mm.
because you've lost somebody.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think one thing with human beings, not just Africans, is that people make rules that suits them.
Mm-hmm.
The people that made those rules about rolling on the floor, about the woman drinking the water they used to bathe her dead husband, is because of what is in it for them to gain. But as time progresses,
Yeah.
that is why we just need to like stand up for these rules that are not beneficial, especially to the grieving people.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, how can somebody lose her husband and then you are thrown out of the house with your children?
Mm-hmm.
Because the man didn't put a will in place and the woman was not maybe financially independent
Mm-hmm.
and she had to start suffering and all that. So I think like we said, is for the women to begin to empower themselves.
Absolutely.
The women, we all need to be empowered. Gone
Mm-hmm.
are those days now that the woman will just sit down and do nothing. No matter how wealthy your husband is,
Mm-hmm.
find something for yourself to do.
Yeah.
Find something for yourself to do. And then we, as human beings, we also need to start putting wills in place as well, especially like
Great
the man,
point.
because if that will is in place, they will not be able to do what they will not be able to throw the woman out because the
Great
will is in
point.
place.
At
So
least they will respect the will. They
yeah,
could fight to an extent,
yeah,
but if you go to the
yeah, yeah,
courts, you would always win
yeah,
because there's something in place. And that's
in
a great
place.
point you touched, because sometimes
Mhm.
we Africans think or believe that when I write a will, it means I'm about to die. No,
Yeah,
that's not what it means. It means I'm
yeah.
just setting things in
My house
place,
in order.
put
Yeah.
things in order, because guess what? We're all going to die someday, right? Now, as a grief coach, when people want to get out of that space of grieving and you're helping them get out of there to take the first step forward, they say that it's hard to do the first thing. And I found out on your Facebook page, somebody says that the
Mhm.
first is always the hardest to do. The
Yeah.
first truly are the hardest. And of
Mhm.
course, you are not the only one who finds them.
Mhm.
That's the first, the hardest. The
Mhm.
first are the hardest because they bring the reality of the loss to the
Mhm.
surface. And this person
Mhm.
says that for me, the hardest first thing I did was attending church service without her. Her is
Mhm.
whoever, is gone. Realizing that we no longer had a wheelchair to push, and
Mhm.
seeing the spot for her wheelchair replaced with a normal chair.
Mhm.
What was your first hard, or your hard first after Grace passed?
Mhm. Actually, that was my response because the person was talking
That was
about
you saying that, yeah,
yeah,
not seeing her
the person
wheelchair.
was asking question about mentioning their own first.
Mm,
And then I was trying to relate to them.
mm-hmm.
So that was my own first
What
because
are some of the
like
firsts that you hear from your clients?
yeah, sometimes the first birthday, the first Christmas
Mm. Without
is
this person, the
yeah,
first
the first
without this
Christmas
person.
without the person is always very difficult because that vacuum is there, no gift for that person, and
Mhm.
no gift from the person at the table. So the first Christmas is always very difficult. The first birthday, and then the first death anniversary is very difficult as well. Yeah, the first death anniversary is very difficult.
So
So
what's your advice to facing the first? as a coach?
You just do whatever you can to honor the memory of the person.
Mm.
And it's okay for you to cry on those days. It's okay
Mm.
because it's going to be hard. So, and one thing we should realize is that crying is also therapeutic
Yeah.
because as you are crying, you are releasing that pain. So let yourself feel whatever
Mm-hmm.
you feel on that day. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, usually on Grace's birthday or death anniversary, I usually take the day off.
Mm-hmm.
And even my children take the day off as well. So usually we'll come together and just remember her and do something. So those firsts that are difficult, find somebody that can be there with you, that you people can be able to support one another and just whatever you can do to honor the memory of the person. And even if it's to cry, just cry, but embrace it and try to move on.
Mm-hmm.
That is just what you can do. But don't bottle up and say, no, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to do this, or try to do something to numb the feeling. Because at the end of the day, you just need to confront it and deal with it. So confront it, let yourself be vulnerable. However you feel, whatever you think you want to do to honor the memory of that person,
Mm-hmm.
do it. And
Yeah.
by
And after
like
and
I said,
after
the
the
first day,
first and the second and the third, it becomes a normal
it becomes
um
easier. Yeah,
a normal occurrence for you. And sometimes, honestly, you might not even remember. You're like, oh, it was yesterday. How could I forget that it was because you've got it into a regular routine of life? Not that you forget about them,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you live
Mhm,
on, because you
mhm,
can't move away from that, but you have to keep living.
mhm.
What you're doing is very commendable. How is grief coaching welcomed in Nigeria, where you're from? How's your work welcomed in Nigeria?
Um,
Received?
I've not really had clients from Nigeria. Okay, I had
Okay.
somebody that is a prospective client. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of people because I don't live in Nigeria now. Okay, I'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
say much that aspect, but I've not really had much clients from Nigeria. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. I think your
but I
service is
have
here
people.
in Africa because a lot of times when people try to comfort you when you're grieving, they shut you up instead. In our
Yes,
African
don't
culture,
cry, don't
they
cry.
do,
Yeah, be
yeah, they
strong.
tell you not to
Yeah,
cry or just do that and just wait. They don't let you let it go and let it flow as you feel. So I think we need more of you in in Nigeria and in Africa where we're from.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that is something for me to think about. Maybe do more
Please.
programs like this and then educate people in Nigeria.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe as you go to Africa to continue the work with your daughter's foundation, start, pumping that a little bit into it. And, who knows?
Yeah, that is true. That is
I
true. Yeah.
like what you say. And like Dr. Messi says, she says, I hear a lot about the first time being with shared and common friends gathering alone. I know, like, shared friends and common friends, and you're there without the other person, it becomes really painful. Well, I want to thank you so much for accepting to stay up late in the UK to come to talk to me, Africa, Eyum Ejiga. You speak so well about what you know and the smiles on your face, even though we're talking
Thank you.
about
And I'm
grief.
enjoying the conversation so much that I'm not even feeling sleepy at all. Like it's almost midnight. It's
It's
actually past
almost
midnight now, but yeah,
Oh,
yeah. You are
that's
great at what you
wonderful.
do as well. You've really engaged me in the conversation, which is
That's great.
well,
I'm really
yeah.
glad. I'm sure that Grace, as we believe in Africa, that the dead are not gone, they're still around. I'm sure she's like smiling and just, watching mom talk about her. Thank you so much for being on Talk to Me Africa.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for
Before you
having me.
go,
Pleasure.
I always
Yeah.
ask my guests to bring an African proverb, a wise word, or your favorite quote to share and just tell us why that quote and what it means to you.
Okay. Which one do I share now? Okay, there's this one that
And you
somebody
can
is
say it in any language. It doesn't have to be in
okay.
English, but just try to explain to us in English what it means.
Okay, I'll say it in pidgin English.
Perfect.
It says, my pikin strong, no be praise, na suffer head.
Hmm. My pikin strong, no be praise that's of her head.
Yes, my pikin strong, no be praise, na suffer head.
Okay.
And what that is that, like, usually the obedient child is usually the one that does all the errands in the house. And then your parent will keep saying, oh, that my pikin is strong. You are so strong. You're so strong. So So I say that when they keep telling you my picking strong, they say they're not praising you, it's off ahead because you end up doing all the work in the
I
house.
get it. I get it. All right. Wow. I mean, I speak pidgin fluently. I have never heard this one. My picking strong. Maybe praise na of head. I love it. Oh, thank you again so much for being on Talk to Me Africa. I look forward to connecting with you another time so we can have more of such conversations.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, have a
And thank you for what you
wonderful,
do. You are doing a great work as well. Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so much, and have a great Friday
Yeah.
night, almost Saturday for you, and a peaceful
Yeah.
weekend.
And you too. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, bye-bye.
It's early evening for you anyway, but good night when you go
Right,
to
but good
bed.
night. Yes, bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.